Support for Radio Friends comes from Columbia Healthy Smiles, the dental office of husband and wife team Dr. Batson and Dr. Abe, offering comprehensive and customized care to patients of all ages. Learn more by calling 573-721-9039 or online at www.columbiahealthysmiles.com. Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Wednesday, April the 6th. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Brittany Whitley is with us from Most Policy Initiative. We've been doing segments with Most from time to time. If you've not heard it before, I want you to explain what Most Policy Initiative is.
Absolutely. So Most Policy Initiative, we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit group. We've been around for a couple years now, and really our ultimate goal is trying to connect science to policy. So making sure that our policymakers have the best scientific information as possible to make their decisions, and then also making sure that the folks who are voting for policymakers have access to that same information so that they can make educated decisions.
Okay, so you're giving information to policymakers, to the lawmakers.
We are.
The information that they're asking for.
Exactly.
Do you ever just go up to them and say, this is a bit of information you need to know, or do you wait for them to ask you?
So we wait for requests from state lawmakers. They come to us. We don't pick what we think is important. We don't want to be considered lobbyists in that way of kind of, I think this might be a little bit more exciting to talk about. Occasionally, if there's a really big topic pulling through, we might ask somebody if they'd like research, but we'll never go into anyone's office and kind of give them unsolicited information.
How can the general public, if they want to become informed, if we want to become informed, how can we access the same information that you were giving to the lawmakers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So on our website, every single science note we write, it's what we call the information we give lawmakers, science notes, they're all available on our website. So the second that we send that information to a lawmaker, it gets posted on our website at the same time. And so there's no gap in delay in the information. You can go on our website, mostpolicyinitiative.org. You can search by topic. So maybe you're really interested in elections, and you can see what we've published on elections. Go find that note, read about it. So that's just kind of one of the ways that we make sure that everybody can access our resources.
Let's talk about elections, because this is something that has been in the news a lot lately. And there are some states that are trying to change the rules for elections. They're saying that they're trying to make the elections fairer, but in many instances, it's making it more difficult for certain groups of people to vote. How do you handle something like that?
Yeah, so one of our fellows, his name's Dr. Tomataro Granzier-Nakajima. He's our fellow who will cover elections issues, and he's actually worked on a bunch of different topics. So in Missouri, for example, I think one of the things you're thinking about is the initiative petition process. So the way by which kind of average citizens can get something that they care about on the ballot to vote on. There's some legislation passing through the General Assembly right now that would change the number of votes that you would need in order to pass those initiatives, the number of signatures that you would have to gather in order to get those on the ballot. And so when we write a science note about that, we're looking at what have other states done, and is there evidence that it's changed things? So when we're thinking about something like, for example, voter fraud, this fellow, Dr. Granzier-Nakajima, worked on a note about voter fraud, and basically what he found is that there's no research evidence that suggests that there's widespread voter fraud.
No, none. Absolutely none.
But what was really interesting, and I was kind of the most surprised about with his note, was that he kind of looked and saw that a lot of our perceptions about voter fraud, it's mostly psychological. If the person that you want to win wins, you're more likely to think there wasn't fraud. If the person you want to win loses, you're more likely to think there was some sort of fraud. And so what he was able to find is there is actually research that kind of explains why we feel the way we do surrounding elections, but there isn't, great research that improving or increasing the amount of ID that you need, for example, to vote is actually going to increase security of elections. And so what we do with lawmakers is not say, please don't pass this bill or please pass this bill, but we say, here's what we know. It might be that they look at the evidence and say, I still kind of think there's a problem that I want to address, and that's fine.
They look at the evidence and think there might be a problem if it's going to help their side of it.
So, sometimes I think given the political climate, we might see that. But what we've been really surprised to find is that people in both political parties have really engaged with the research and kind of said, if this state's tried this and they haven't seen anything change, what's maybe another approach we can do?
Okay.
So we're not making these huge kind of wave changes, but really just trying to get people to think a little bit more about the how they get to these solutions.
Then the research you've done shows that there is no widespread voter fraud.
There's no research evidence that exists.
Then why is this conception still hanging on?
So I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Certainly a little bit above my pay grade for kind of why that perception exists. But I do think that, again, there's these psychological effects. And also one of the other things is kind of thinking about where this information is coming from. So all of the work we do, we try to rely on academic resources and nonpartisan resources. When you start to get into the political strategy, I think, of both sides. Both sides do this.
Yeah.
Then it starts to become a little bit more, well, this side has conflicting evidence to this. So we really try to help people navigate that and say, here's where bias might be entering into the data that you've seen in front of you, and here's our best interpretation of kind of what that unbiased information is. It's hard. It's really a challenge, and that's why I'm so thankful to have the PhDs we have on staff to kind of help us wade through all of this research, because it's a lot.
Yeah. What have you got coming out as far as reaching out to the community?
Yeah, so every month we do roundtable events, and so we pick a topic that's important to Missouri and talk about it. So earlier this year, we've done maternal health disparities in Missouri. We've done solar energy. Earlier in April, we did a roundtable about stormwater runoff. Coming up later in May and June, we're doing roundtable events about tick-borne diseases in Missouri and how climate change is impacting the spread of these diseases. And then we're also going to talk about drought in Missouri and the relationship between drought and health and climate change. So basically, these are free. They're available virtually, and then we post them on YouTube. So if you can't make it the day of, you can watch them. So that's one of the ways, the science notes. And then we're also kind of making these short videos of our science notes. So maybe you don't want to read 4 whole pages. Maybe you want to watch 60 seconds. So we're also kind of helping people engage that way.
We've got about 30 seconds left here, but climate change. What kind of response do you get from the lawmakers on climate change?
I found that it's been the most effective when we talk about how climate change is impacting people. So when we think about how climate is impacting farmers, we have a lot more kind of ability to have research-based discussion. So we try to focus on how is this impacting Missouri specifically, and how could you see a policy making a change?
Okay. All right. So if you want more information on this, you got your hands full.
It's a lot of fun. I really like my job.
Good. If people want more information, they can go to mostpolicyyinitiative.org. The information that you give the lawmakers will be posted online simultaneously. Once they have it, the public can have it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure chatting with you, Brittany.
Thanks so much, Paul.
And I don't envy you with your job. All right? Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.